It helps so much to separate the observable physical reality of a situation, especially when you're feeling really low.
The very distinct nature of trapped thinking isn't just true versus something false or whatever. It's that a truth and something false get fused together. So now we're really stuck because we're holding on to the true part and the false part's spliced there into it.
Rule number one of brainstorming is you keep going past your first, past your second, past your third or fourth idea. You keep coming up with more ideas. Don't stop because one seems pretty good. You keep asking yourself, what are other ways to look at this? And once you have a whole collage or rainbow or collection of ideas, then you might notice that there was one in particular that excited you the most, or one in particular that gave you the most peace of mind. Say if you're feeling traumatized by something in the past, or overwhelmed, there might be one perspective that makes you go, wow, actually, that's a wonderful way to look at it. That's the way we should judge a good perspective or a bad perspective. If it helps you in this goal, then it's the right perspective for you. You're not saying it's right for everyone. You don't need to judge it as objectively right or wrong. Who's to say? If it helps you do what you need to do, or be who you want to be, or feel at peace, then it's the right one for you for now. It doesn't even need to be the right one for always. It's just for now.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Greg McKeown, and today we have the one and only Derek Sivers. It's so tricky to even frame Derek. He's sort of one of a kind. I mean, he's an American entrepreneur, an author, a musician, programmer. He's unconventional, and that's part of what I think his appeal has been to so many people around so many things. Born 1969, Berkeley, California. Multifaceted life, music, technology, creative pursuits, resides now in New Zealand, but also likes to have passports for all sorts of places in the world because that's how he thinks, that's how he rolls. Perhaps best known for CD Baby, an online platform for independent musicians to sell their music, and then after having amassed $100 million in sales, sold it, and then put the proceeds into a charitable trust because Derek Sivers. Also well known for those that recall it, the TED talk in 2010, How to Start a Movement. It's short, it's incisive, it's memorable, it's its own sort of movement about the importance of the second person in being able to actually get a movement going, and of course a little more than that. But again, this is who we're talking about, but also as an author. We're thinking now 2011, the book Anything You Want, or Your Music and People, or Hell Yeah or No from 2020. But also, well, I should say How to Live in 2021, but also a new book, Useful, Not True. I could say many more things, but it really is a pleasure to have you with the podcast today. Derek, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. That was very theatrical. I imagined you walking on a stage saying, but also, and one more thing. And you might have thought that was it. But no, there's one more thing.
Well, that's funny you should say that, because there was one more thing I was going to say, and it's this. Remember when Steve Jobs gave his, quite famous now speech at Stanford? It was the convocation in which he was saying, look, okay, this is what I've learned about life. And he just told these 3 stories, but he ended with those fabulous words. He didn't come up with them, coin them, but sort of made them famous. And it's stay hungry, stay foolish. And that's what I want to say sort of about both your approach and, that's my sort of one take on thinking about how you approach your life, but also I think part of the theme of this book, and you're going to tell me how I'm wrong.
No, not wrong. I am hungry and foolish.
But particularly the approach. I mean, this idea of useful, not true. I mean, I haven't even expressed what it is and the meaning of it to people. But there's something about this, the power of perspective and the power of not taking what people say as literally accurate and that you have to absorb it as true. And, you know, that this idea of stay hungry, stay foolish, keep learning, keep challenging, keep questioning, wondering, you know, what really is most useful. And maybe you can share in your own words how you think about this new book.
Sure. Well, it's not the book per se. The book was my own little mini exploration of an idea that kept coming up when I would share some perspective I hold, some rule of thumb or philosophy that drives me. And every now and then somebody in the comments would push back and say, but that's not true. And I'd say, I never said it was true. I said, it's useful. It's useful for me to think this way. Thinking this way helps me take the right actions. Or thinking this way puts me into a mindset that helps me see opportunities. And I had to explain this so many times that I thought, well, let me focus on this idea. And it goes like this. Around us, there are people that we all know that are stuck. They're stuck in a rut because they're stuck in stories of the past. Somebody wronged me. I'm no good at this. I live in a bad place. I'm not one of the lucky ones, etc. Or they have no ability to see opportunities. They look around them and they declare that they are in a jail cell. That this is it. I'm stuck. Dead-end job. No opportunities. No chance of advancement. They can't even see it. In their mind, both of those things I just said are realities. It's an absolute reality to them that they are in a jail cell, metaphorically.
They are a prisoner.
Yeah, they are stuck. There is no way out. Or I am a living tragedy. I'm not one of the lucky ones. I'm not one of those people who succeed. All right, I'm picking two obvious examples, but you get the idea. Both of those feel like a reality because they've declared it as true. And I think that's a major problem is when we declare something as true, we stop questioning it. It's a fact and that's that. It's a closed matter. It's done. But as soon as you say something is not necessarily true, I'm not saying it's false, just not necessarily, objectively, absolutely, observably, empirically true for everyone, everywhere, always. As soon as you introduce a little doubt, well, then you open it up and you say, well, how else could I see the situation? Right? So I'm not one of the lucky ones. Well, how else could I see that situation? Nobody's born lucky. Everybody has circumstances and they make things of them. Or I'm trapped. How else could I see that situation? Maybe I'm not trapped. Maybe if I'm in a metaphorical jail cell, there's actually a hole underneath the bed. There's a trap door in here somewhere that I haven't explored. I find that the most successful people and the happiest people I've ever met are the ones who have the ability to reconsider a situation and not declare it true, closed, and done.
Yeah, I mean, you're combining the word true with the sense of complete, fixed, ended, done. And I think that's an important distinction. What you're sharing reminds me of a conversation I just had that's slightly nuanced compared to what you've just said, because there's sort of two ways one can be a prisoner to one's thoughts. You know, one is, like you're saying, declaring a statement that is fixed and limited and so on. But then there's another kind where you don't actually know what the frame is that has you trapped. You just feel trapped and you don't know why. And in fact, you might have been trapped for a long time and tried to get out, but you don't know it's because of the meaning frame that you have attributed to something. So if you'll allow, let me just share a little more, because it's just to me, an incredible story. This is a professor at Cambridge and a friend of mine who several years ago, I went for this long walk with him, and he was so excited about a new book that he wanted to write and was talking to me about, well, how do I do that? And what should I, and we just talked for 2 or 3 hours on this walk, and he was just ready to go, and he started making progress on it. And then, 3 years go by, and we're going on a walk again, and he says, things in my life are so good. He said, but now, every time I try to write that book, I'm frozen. I can't make any progress, and I don't know why. So it's interesting because here you have this high performer, high performance in, let's say there's 10 areas of life, and like 9 of them he's high performing in. And he used to be making progress on the book, but suddenly he's not. And so this, of course, fascinating to me and interesting to me, and I'm doing research specifically about this kind of trap that we get into. So I can't help but go there as you're describing this. And so I spent like a couple of hours in a very particular listening process that I've been working on for years. And within that 2 hours, we identified what the trap was and unlocked it, and he's now on his way. So it was a really amazing experience. And he gave me permission to be able to share this. So this is literally like last week. So here's how it worked. As he started work on the book, Russia invaded Ukraine, and he's from Ukraine, and his mother was killed in that invasion. And it's just enormously disruptive, as you would imagine, but it's also really ambiguous because they don't know how she died, or they don't know where she's buried. I mean, it's like kind of a horrific trauma to try and navigate. So what he didn't know is that his mind had formed a code, and the code was this. So he didn't know this. When I work on this book, the worst things in my life happen.
Ooh.
So, of course, if that were true, then he shouldn't work on the book. I mean, everything in that code is protecting him from the worst things that could possibly happen in his life. So, of course, he shouldn't write the book. Of course, something will, overpower his desire to write it. And so, literally, seeing the belief was, I believe, was enough for him to change. Now, that isn't where we stopped, but I think going from being a prisoner to an observer is so significantly different that you can start to make changes about things. But then we changed one word, which was, when I was working on the book, the worst thing in my life happened. So suddenly you make a shift from then and now. So that was a big break. But then before we were done, before that 2 hours was over, we came up with this phrase together, which is, when I complete this book, I will have completed the most meaningful thing. I will have healed from the most challenging thing in my life, because he wants to dedicate the book to his mother and so on. This was the process, end to end. 2 hours, complete shift. And I just couldn't help but share that, given what you've just described, because it's, I think, the very distinct nature of trapped thinking isn't just true versus something false or whatever. It's that a truth and something false get fused together. So now we're really stuck because we're holding on to the true part, and the false part's like just spliced there into it. And that's why we're trapped. So we keep holding on to the truth. This part is true. This is correct. This is right. And we can't seem to dislodge it. And I think it's because, like two magnets, they hold together. And so we have to discover them, they find that code, recode it, and so on. Anyway, I thought that might be a good place for us to, to hear your thoughts and, your sense of that example and story.
I love this. Let's look at political commentary where they say, this is what happened today and this is what it means.
100%.
Well, the trouble is, one of those things is true when one of them is not. And it's hard to unbundle them. It's like, okay, true, this political leader signed this paper today. That actually happened. What it means, that's just one perspective. There are many, many, many perspectives you can look at on this.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that in our own lives. Last time I tried to tell my husband I didn't want to go with him to the ball game, he didn't speak to me for a week. So therefore, I can never tell him what I want. Okay, well, one of those things is true and one is a perspective. And it's not the only perspective. It helps so much to separate the observable physical reality of a situation, especially when you're feeling really low, you're feeling overwhelmed. I think a lot of people come to your work because they feel overwhelmed, right? You have such a clear voice that helps them get out of this feeling of overwhelm. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, it feels like reality. You know, I am buried under so much stuff. I am overwhelmed. There's too much. I'm freaking out. Life is horrible. I can't handle this. And it's so useful in those moments to say, hold on, look around me. I'm just sitting on a chair in a room. Are you in any physical danger? No. Okay, so you're safe. If you turn off your screen, are these things a physical problem around you? Are you actually burdened under carrying heavy weights right now? No. So these are interpretations in your head. It's not the only way to look at it. There was a moment at the end of my 10 years of running my company. I didn't know it was the end yet. I just spoiled the story. But right at the end, I was feeling so overwhelmed that I called a friend and I said, this, and I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I have to do this. And he said, Derek, you don't have to do anything. I said, yes, I do. I have to pay my employees. I have to pay my taxes. I have to ship the orders that people have bought today. He goes, no, you don't. I said, yes, I do. I have to pay my employees. And he said, Derek, I'm not just being metaphysical here. You need to understand this point. You don't have to do anything. He said, right now, you could just go to a park, lay down on a park bench, like, who is that dude that wrote the book, The Power of Now?
Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle, yes. He said, you've heard of Eckhart Tolle, right? Yes, okay. You know how Eckhart Tolle just laid down on a park bench at one point in his life and just let the whole world pass in front of his eyes for a couple of years? He said, you could do that. You could lay down on a park bench and just ignore everything. I said, no, but I have to pay my employees. He said, no, you don't have to pay them. They would eventually stop showing up to work. Maybe somebody would try to file in small claims court to recoup the money that you were supposed to pay them last week, but maybe not. Maybe they just say, oh, well, that guy's crazy. He's lost it, and move on with their lives. The people whose orders you don't ship, maybe they'll contact their credit card company and get a refund saying the company never shipped the order. And maybe a few years later, the IRS will contact you saying you owe them some more money. He said, but you don't have to do anything. You could just, you're choosing to do all of this. But you could walk away from all of it at any moment, and you need to know that this is all optional. All of this you've chosen. I think of this so much with my friends in India and China that have a strong sense of family obligation. My parents need me to do this. My parents are expecting this. My parents are insisting I get married. My parents are insisting I live at home. And I say, well, you don't have to. And they say, Derek, you don't know what it's like to grow up in this family. I say, I'm just saying, physical reality. Anybody can do this from any culture. Look around you. You don't have to do anything. You're choosing to do it. You always got to remember that this is a choice you've made that you can walk away from.
One of the things I love in the things you've said so far is connecting for me in a recent thought, which is that the meaning frame you want is the one that maximizes agency. And that seems to run like a kind of a gold thread through this recent unbook that you've written. That that it's instead of, okay, just holding an idea as if it's the truth, the end, it's like, well, which way of looking at this will maximize my sense of choice here, instead of minimizing it literally almost to zero based upon whichever frame you have. And anyway, I'm curious about your reaction to that.
Yeah. It's brainstorming. The rule number one of brainstorming is you keep going past your first, past your second, past your third or fourth idea. You keep coming up with more ideas. Don't stop because one seems pretty good. You keep asking yourself, what are other ways to look at this? And once you have a whole collage or rainbow or collection of ideas, then you might notice that there was one in particular that excited you the most, or one in particular that gave you the most peace of mind. Say if you're feeling traumatized by something in the past, or overwhelmed, like we just said, there might be one perspective that makes you go, wow, actually, that's a wonderful way to look at it. Or if it's about motivation and taking action, you helped your friend from Ukraine see a particular point of view that was one of many. There are hundreds of ways he could have looked at it, but you helped him find one that's making him take action. And therefore, that's the way we should judge a good perspective or a bad perspective is, does it help you be who you want to be, or do what you need to do, or just to feel at peace? If it helps you in this goal, then it's the right perspective for you. You're not saying it's right for everyone. You don't need to judge it as objectively right or wrong. Who's to say? If it helps you do what you need to do, or be who you want to be, or feel at peace, then it's the right one for you for now. It doesn't even need to be the right one for always. It's just for now.
Yeah, it's a perpetual flexibility in thinking, a kind of willingness to constantly upgrade one's thinking, and I like what you're saying. It's like, or what does it need? How do we need to look at it right now? I mean, I like that too. It's like not necessarily just always upgraded. Just okay. What's a useful perspective now to have on this, so that I can operate in the right way, in the best way that I can in this moment. Yeah. Something you said earlier sparked a thought for me, which is what your friend seemed to do with you when you were running the business and feeling so tightly constrained by the responsibilities that you had. It's the quote is from Stephen Covey. It's that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies all of our freedom for growth and so on. And it's completely, almost universally misattributed to Viktor Frankl. Almost everywhere, in fact, it is named as by Viktor Frankl, and I absolutely guarantee everybody listening it is not by Viktor Frankl. There is nowhere that he said that. The only reason people think it is, by the way, is because actually it's kind of a meta moment, because in 7 Habits, the ideas appear next to each other. And so somebody's connected them, just like we've been describing, like a truth with a fake idea, combined it, and then like you can't undo it. But what is interesting is I went back, at least for me, I went back to speak to one of the ghostwriters of 7 Habits, one of the collaborators on that, to find out what book did inspire it, because that's not stated anywhere publicly. And they came back to me, and they said it was as a result of Stephen reading Gift of the Sea by Murrow. And I just went back to reread that book, and every part of the book is breathing this idea. It's never stated precisely that way, but it's illustrated everywhere. We have all of this noise, all of these responsibilities, all of these burdens, all of these have-tos, and how do you create some space inside of yourself so that you can choose and operate and think about life, not just living life, not having life live you. So it seems like that's what your friend did to you, for you, and again, that's a kind of a theme through this treatise that you've written. That this just creates space. You don't have to react to your own thoughts, to what other people say is the way the world is. You can step aside, become the observer of yourself, of everything, and then from that point of view start to explore ways of looking and ways of thinking. And seems like to me there's two kinds of life, and the one is before you realize you have you have that ability, and the one that's after it, that you are not your thoughts and you're not other people's thoughts. You are the observer. That's the real you, and you get some space to make some choices. How do you respond?
I love this subject. What was the name of that book that was filled with this idea?
Gift of the Sea.
Cool. I got to find that. I love this idea. Oh, go ahead.
Hold on. Now that we're going there, I mean, Gift of the Sea. This is written by Anne Morrow Lindbergh, and it is beautiful. Now, I know you have like hundreds of books on your list, so it's terrible to be a book pusher when somebody is so burdened already by the number of books that they have written, but also have read, but also the ones that they haven't yet. But this is worth pushing up on the list. But right. Go ahead, carry on.
You've written, you write. One of my favorite moments of writing is in the exploration of an idea, you come across a new epiphany that didn't necessarily come from anywhere, but your own connecting of ideas inside of you. As I was writing Useful Not True, I came across a sentence that I just adore, partially for the inner rhyme, which is, your first thought is an obstacle. I love that idea. Your first thought is an obstacle. We should not honor our instincts. We should not glorify our first reaction as some kind of authenticity that is our true self. It's often just leftover baggage from your past. It's an old habit that you picked up unintentionally, unthoughtfully. And we should think of our first thought as an obstacle that we need to get past. Like something happens, somebody yells at you, your first reaction is this. That's not the one you should be acting on. You should stop and think, all right, well, that was my first reaction. What's another reaction I could be having right now? That's another one. What's another one? And what's another one? Of all of those, I'm going with number 4. I'm choosing that reaction. What a better world. What a better way to live. We would all benefit from getting past our first reaction to anything and thinking of other ones.
Yeah, one of the phrases I love for this idea is third thoughts. Because you have, well, we don't really normally say first thoughts, but you say, on second thoughts, so that, you sort of represent that there's a first thought, but it's like just beyond that. What's your third thought? Like this, just push beyond, notice your first thought, notice the second thought, keep going, because there's so many limits we don't recognize, because the code is just, well, if you don't notice the thoughts, the code, the system, it's already running you. So nice trying to see it seems to me to be, well, what have you found, what have you found to be the most useful tool or habit or mechanism for shifting from being a prisoner to thoughts to being an observer of those thoughts?
Journaling, hands down. If you read anything if you've read anything I've done, you'll know that I have a very personal, to each his own approach to life. So this is one of the only things that I think absolutely everybody should do is journaling. Whether you handwrite or type into text files or speak into a voice recorder or whatever it may be, journaling helps you process today's thoughts, consider other options, consider other ways of looking at things, but also historically helps you go back and accurately see your past self in the moment without the fog of memory, which then helps you make better decisions for the future. It's so useful in so many ways, but I could go on and on and on about journaling. Instead, the one you asked about, do you want me to go on and on and on about journaling?
Yeah, we share a great love for this.
Okay, cool. So, at very least, wait, actually, let me back up. I didn't start doing this till I was 42 years old because I found myself considering starting another company. And I thought, yeah, I miss having a company. I want to do that again. And then I thought, wait, do I?
Do I?
Do I really miss having a company? Hold on. I'm remembering it.
This before 10 years are invested in something that, you know.
I'm remembering it fondly, but is that just the
nostalgia?
Pleasant purple fog of memory and nostalgia? Yeah, better word. Is that just nostalgia? Has my remembrance of this gone blurry through time? And I wished that I had a journal from age 28 to 38 that I could have read exactly what I was doing every single day and how I was feeling and whether I was actually happy or not. That would have helped so much to help me decide whether I actually wanted to start another company or not, based on how I actually enjoyed it in the day. So at the age of 42, I wished that I would have been keeping a journal this whole time. Damn, and especially going way back to when I was 22 years old and I was touring Japan with a Japanese pop star and like so many things in my life. Damn, I wish I had a journal from that time. It's just gone. It's just a few faint little memories. Damn, it's one of my biggest regrets in life is that I didn't keep a daily journal ever since then. And I don't just mean a diary that you only turn to when you're upset, to vent to if your friends don't want to listen to you. I used to do that too. So I did have, in my 30s, some diary entries that I would only open up the diary if I really had muddled thoughts that I wanted to sort out. But then if you look back through the past of those, you only see an entry every 12 days when I have muddled thoughts. And that's not useful to future self. So my prescription for anyone listening, if you haven't already started, start now. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now. Just start a daily habit. It could just be 5 minutes of, ideally at the end of the day, just writing down what you did today and how you felt. And if anything's unresolved before you go to sleep, try to just work it out a little bit. Just try to accurately describe how you're thinking and feeling about this. And then, as we were saying, in the moment, maybe consider another point of view, or maybe you don't consider it till tomorrow. Maybe just the act of describing to your future self how you're feeling today will help you think more clearly about it overnight, and you'll have more insights tomorrow. And then you can go back to see what you said yesterday or a year ago. Ideally, this is what I love about text files, is it's easy to search for a certain word. Right? So I can just search for a word like overwhelmed, or search for a word like Singapore. If I remember that something happened when I was in Singapore and I want to find that, don't remember what day it is, but just search the word Singapore. There it is. I like text files for this, but whatever works best for you that gets you actually doing it every night. So useful to help you make better decisions about your future, to get more clarity about your past and your decisions and how you're feeling today, and help you process today's thoughts and mixed emotions.
There's a lot to unpack in what you've just said, but it makes me think of a conversation I had with my wife Anna earlier today about about change and how to make a long-term change in your life, and we could just apply it to journaling for a second. What she was trying to articulate to me, sort of summarized in this idea, like a commitment that in the future you will never again not do something. Okay, there's a bit more. Meaning, with journaling, for example, I just heard it in the subtext of what you were saying, is there's a difference between what I think a lot of people do with change, including specifically with journal keeping. I'm going to write a great journal every day of my life from now on, right? Like, that's one way to frame it. And it's really predictable. You know, day one, you write an essay. Day two, you got no time to write that essay again, so then you skip day two, and then day three, you feel bad, but now you've got 2 days to catch up, and so it's over before you begin. But it's different. It's different when you get to a point like you did with journaling, where you go, oh, I wish I had had that. I'm never going to not have it. And here's why I think it matters so much, the distinction, because what we really want is a high commitment to a low standard. So that you say, it's not, I'm going to write a journal every day of my life forever and ever and amazing. It's, I'm never not going to. It's different. If I miss a day, my intent is still there. I'm going to still write a tiny amount. I'm going to come back to it, because I never want to be in that position where I look back and go, oh, where is it? It's not there. I don't have it. And that was absolutely key to my own journaling, which, I mean, I think I'm at, you know, I think 14 years without missing a day, and it was, I'm never not going to have a sentence. It wasn't, I'm going to write masses. In fact, I had an upper limit, so it was like 5 sentences was the maximum. So
Wow.
I could just keep going for a long time, for a few months, until I never would miss a day. 1 sentence at the least, 5 sentences the most, so that you just keep it going until it becomes a part of your system. Now I'll write more, but if I ever miss it, so to speak, it's fine, because if I have to make up 3 days, you can do a sentence, three sentences, and then you're caught up for 3 days. So that difference of, like, I'm never not going to have any, for a long period of time, somehow that seems similar to me in what you're describing and what changed for you. Did I get it wrong?
That's right. I think it's beautiful. I love the idea of just 5 sentences or setting a maximum. That's brilliant. I do often miss a day, say once a week. It'll happen that I fall asleep at night while tucking my kid into bed. We'll be sitting there reading a story, and I'll fall asleep too, and then I'll go straight to bed, and then the next day I'll think, oh, I didn't write anything yesterday. That's fine. I just have a thing. I just open up yesterday's day and I just type, you know, had a great day with my kid, fell asleep in bed, happy day. That's it. But man, there are some days, and we all know these days, where you have a big decision in front of you. You've got some options to work through. You've got a lot to sort out. And man, it really helps to just have this place where you can just free flow your thoughts into this and just write and write and write, or speak and speak and speak. My kid, actually, I got him journaling. He really prefers the voice recorder. He keeps a little voice recorder with him at all times, like in his school backpack. And sometimes on the way to school or on the way home from school, he's voice recording into his little journal. I never hear it, but he's got a daily thing, he tells me. And so handy. Yeah, even if you need to go back and make up yesterday's.
But I was studying this just within the last week, doing a deep dive on language and the degree to which we can think if we don't have language. This was my, you know, fun deep dive. And there is some evidence that if you lose, for example, as some people do, completely lose their speech, that they can still think, they can still solve, so they can't speak anymore, but they can solve mathematical problems and so on. So there's obviously something, you know, I don't want to overstate the point that I'm about to make, because there is There is evidence of this. But there's such an enormous loss in your thinking quality if you don't have language. So at first, that's spoken language, right? So so there's a fascinating case study of an infant who grows up with almost no human interaction at all, and so by the time they are discovered by people, they have almost no spoken language, and their cognitive ability is massively depreciated because of that. So having spoken language is key to your ability to think clearly. Okay, so that's one thing, right? So we have to be able to communicate, talk with each other. As we're talking, we start learning and seeing our thinking. And this is one of the reasons free speech matters so much as a fundamental way of living, because if you can't, to some extent, if you can't speak, you can't think. But then let's go one step further. What does writing give you that speaking doesn't? And I think among the things it gives you is it allows you to store for the future. So there's a huge difference. If this conversation, if we're having it and nothing's recorded, we could still have something that really triggers a thought for us, or an insight, or a change. But the difference of recording it, the difference of having a transcript, the difference of being able to, means for the rest of forever, we can access it. And that's what I think journaling, why it matters so much is because it transfers thinking as units, like a library from which you can continue to grow and continue to access and continue to evolve your understanding, which what's the word I'm looking for, where if you're investing in something in the repeated benefits of that, compounding benefit of writing thoughts versus just speaking thoughts versus just having those thoughts is really distinctive and different. That's what I hear you describing here, that the writing has been a game changer for you.
Totally agree. And the last time you asked a question a few minutes ago, where you ended with saying something like, "This is the way I see what you're saying. Am I wrong?" I forgot to add one more important point.
Please.
Is I started to see the huge upside of having that daily journal going back for years. That's the thing that keeps me going more than some proclamation that I'm never not going to miss a day or anything like that. Everybody's got their own motivations. Mine is seeing the massively huge benefit that would have for my future self to be able to look back at every single day in my past, going back many years. So as of now, it's been 13 years that I haven't missed a day. And I can tell you it has helped so much, so much, in even just tiny concrete ways.
Like?
With, oh God, I'm going to give you a huge one, but I'm going to be succinct about this story. That I was in a romantic relationship, a very serious one, where we were on the verge of having kids and getting married and all of that. And it had been great, but it was currently really rough. And one friend nudged me to go back and look at my diary because she said, "I think you're remembering the past a little differently." And so as we were about to make this massive leap into like, let's have a baby, let's get married, and I was feeling so, oh man, how do we get through this current trauma or this current dilemma? I went back and reread every diary entry since the day I had met her, and only then I realized it had always been hard, or say like 80% of the time on a day-to-day level had been really hard. And that helped me make the huge, difficult decision to break up. And it was the right thing to do, but damn, it was hard. And it was only possible because of that journal history. If not for that, I would be in a bad relationship right now. I am so thankful for that. Maybe I should have ended with the big one, but now I'm going to give the little ones that I should have started with.
Let me just jump in and then give me
sure.
the specifics too. But like what I heard you just describe there was the difference between the dots of life and then connecting the dots. You know, it's what's happening and so what? What does it mean? And I do think it's profound because it's so relatable that you couldn't tell. You know, like how could you not tell? I mean, all of us. How can we not tell what's happening? We're there. You're there. You're in the relationship. It's years. How can we not know? That it's such a strange thing about life that you can be living it and doing it and in a relationship and miss the news of your own life. You know, really though. And I think unless you have a mechanism for actually capturing the dots, and then, you know, it took a prompt to be able to like go back and look at all the dots. You can't connect them. I think it's very hard given the limits of our memory. I think it's extraordinary. When I challenge myself like this, you know, everyone listening can do the same thing. What did you do last Thursday? Right, okay, like, can you remember? And maybe people can. Okay, well, I know on a Thursday I do this. What about the Thursday before that? What about the Tuesday before that? Okay, that's it. It's gone. There's I think there's like nobody listening who can immediately, unless there was some particular thing that they have, you know, like randomly, you know, they don't know what they did 2 Thursdays ago, Tuesday before that. And yet they were there. And if they had the right prompt, it's all stored. It's in the hard drive of our mind, but it's not there. It's accessible. And that's like 3 weeks ago. That's nothing. So there's such a limit in our ability to remember and connect the dots. And so, I mean, to me, that's a profound part of your story. To miss the news of a relationship you are experiencing all the time, unless you have a mechanism for observing it over a period of time.
Yeah. Your daily recollection of today and your sharing of how you're feeling today, right now, is so much more accurate than even tomorrow's look back at today. That's why it's ideal to try to capture at the end of today, capture how you're feeling today. Because sometimes just after a good sleep, you're saying, you know what? I was complaining yesterday, but it's not so bad. It's like, well, you really kind of need to capture that complaint because your future self will be in the complaint, not in the day after the complaint. You're always in the now, living that. So,
yeah, the degradations, the degradations, that's not the right word. What is it called? Where you, you know, like the depreciation, that's not quite the right word, but like the speed of, what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, Derek, help me with this.
Both of those were good. I think you could find the intersection of those two words.
Well, there's something particular I'm looking for, but it's just like the speed of falling off. You know, when I'm doing a catch-up day, I'm amazed at the difference. Just today, I can just fill a page. So many things have happened and so many thoughts. And if I'm rewriting, it's like, okay, I guess I think I did this, and let's look at the calendar, and let's remember, and you're kind of capturing it. But that day was just as rich as today.
Yeah.
Just my memory's not. So, and then you were saying that there were specific small things though that you gained from doing it too.
Oh, okay. I'll just pick some real core ones. Often when a dear friend calls, I'll jot it in my diary somewhere. Maya called today and we talked about this and this and this. And there have been times when I have wondered, like if I started to lose touch with a friend, that I'm able to see, wow, it seems like Maya and I used to talk more often. I was like, well, let me go look at the facts. Like, look at this. We used to talk every 2 or 3 days. Now we're talking every 2 or 3 weeks. When did this change happen? So it's interesting to, again, find the facts instead of just your fuzzy recollection. including when I haven't talked with an old friend in a few years, I'm able to pull up the last time we talked. Look at this. It was 5 years ago, and here's what we talked about. How have you been, Andrew? It's been a long time. That's handy. Let's see. There was one time entering the U.S. or filing my taxes or something where they said, please list your entry and exit dates of all of your visits to the U.S. over the last 10 years. I went, actually, I have those.
Yes.
I just searched for the word flight, and of course, or flight or plane or airport or something like that. And there it was, even though I didn't know I was logging that, but just by the fact of course, I'm going to mention, long flight at the airport, something like that. There it is, every entry and exit date. Here's my last one to end on.
No,
it's interesting to see what ideas and desires have stuck around for the longest. So I just last week posted an article on my blog called How to Listen to Ulysses. And it was a recipe for an idea I had, usually the kind of thing that I just keep in my journal and let it pass. But Seth Godin told me I should post it. So I posted it. And after posting it, I thought, I really should go download the audiobook for Ulysses. Like just buy the MP3 or buy the CDs and rip them or whatever I need to do. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to listen to Ulysses all the way through. And I started in the process, and there in my hard drive was Ulysses already downloaded and encoded something like 12 years ago when I had the same idea. And I went, oh my God, I searched my diary for the word Ulysses. And I've had this thought a few times over 12 years. So to me, that bumps something up in my to-do list. Like, all right, this isn't just today's whim. Yes. I've wanted this for 12 years. It's time to do something about it. So I've started collecting my thoughts on a certain subject that I keep coming back to. Instead of just mixing them into my daily diary, I have a separate thoughts on journal, which is a topic-based journal because it's just on a computer anyway. It's easy to just make a new folder. I thought for years about whether to get a dog or not. I thought for years about whether to move back to Singapore again or not. I thought for years about what does home mean to me? What's my definition of home? When do I feel most at home? Keep coming back to this thought on what home means to me. So there's a folder called Thoughts on Home. There's a folder called Thoughts on Singapore. A folder called Thoughts on Dog. And every time I have a new thought about a dog, getting a dog, or Singapore, or home, I just put it in that diary, and then I'm able to look back through 15 years of thoughts on whether to get a dog or what home means to me. It's so fun.
You're describing, I think, the creation of a second mind.
I think that's a trademarked phrase. I'm not sure we're allowed to use that anymore, Tiago.
Is that true? Oh, okay,
No. I'm kidding.
Who trademarked it? I don't.
Oh, that's Tiago's thing, the second brain or something like that. Or
okay. Good. Well,
good for him.
We'll use it anyway. But the idea. Well, I have a friend who has kept a mind web. I don't know, I think for the last 20 years of everything. If he's met you, you're in it. So it's literally like the most complete mind map, probably that anyone's ever done. I mean, he is just, it's a different kind of journaling, but he is literally constantly connecting the dots as he's doing it. And I don't exactly know what he gets from it precisely, but it's a pretty fascinating approach to be able to constantly be adding experiences within certain buckets and connecting those with other things, so that he's looking at this vast a kind of mind palace that he's created, so that he's just so much more aware than the sort of the reactive way of going through life. Tell me this: what do you think? What do you think is the number one thing you would miss if you couldn't write your journal anymore, couldn't write thoughts down, like what's the loss like for you in such a proposition?
It would be like somebody who lives in a driving place not having a car anymore. And what used to be a 10-minute drive would now be a 5-hour walk on the highway to get somewhere. It would feel like I had lost 90% of my power. My journal has become my augmented memory. And to lose that power would feel like I don't know how to walk anymore. I can only crawl from now on. Like, okay, life is still worth living, but oof, it's so much harder now. It's just, everything's disappeared. I really love reviewing my past thoughts so much. I really, more than anything, let's say that's the second most important, but number one, processing today's thoughts. If I couldn't write, well then, damn, I better have a very patient best friend who's going to listen to me talking and talking and talking about today and processing. And yes, I do have best friends that we do have our daily sharing of ideas and perspectives and events and processing and echoing. It's so important. But man, without also being able to write it down, I miss that the most.
Well, it's such an interesting description that it would be like crawling, or it would be so slow. I mean, I think the idea of I think that's one of the hesitancies people have about journaling, is that it takes so much time. In their minds, they think because it has to be this complex version of it and so on. But also just it's a clear an actual time commitment that you're spending time doing this, so you must be making a trade-off. But the idea that it accelerates your thinking, accelerates your processing, accelerates the quality of that thinking. That's an interesting and I think in a way a little surprising answer. That the speed, it's like the speed of journaling, or I don't know, something like that. I don't think most people put
power
those two words
boost
together. What's that?
Yeah, the power boost. It feels like a power boost.
Yeah, like a the movie Limitless.
No.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm not tempted by drugs. I'm not. That's not been my story. But that movie is the premise of the movie is there's this one pill, and if you take it, it unlocks your full capacity. Your every thought you've ever had, you have access to it immediately. You can bring anything back to any moment. You can memorize a language in a weekend, write a best-selling book in an afternoon. It was just this enormous accelerating experience. And so, yeah, if that existed per se, that would be tempting, because there's so much to learn and life is so short, and this is the upload speed is extremely frustrating to me. So it just feels aligned somehow to that if you want to accelerate your thinking, access more of your potential, speed up your learning capacity, journaling. I mean, so many people wouldn't make that connection, I think.
Yeah.
But
it is. It's dead on, though. Yeah. I hadn't heard of the movie, but once you started describing what it feels like, it's like, yeah, that is what journaling feels like to me. This feels like a superpower. So I don't usually do predictions. All predictions are wrong. But it was a fun daydream to think recently, what if the best AI engines we have now get even, say, 5 times better? Not infinite, just 5 times better. And you're able to have it locally and private, so you're not uploading anything to OpenAI or Anthropic or DeepSeek, but it's completely local on a private computer in your home that's not connected to the internet. Just no chance of it ever going to anyone else ever. It's on a private Linux computer that you set up and you control it. And it's got an AI on it that's 5 times better than anything we've got now. Now imagine this. Passing it every single thing you've ever written in your private diary that you would not let another human see. And imagine if you started recording every conversation you've had with everyone. Like, say, microphones in your house that are, again, ensured to be private, not uploading to Apple or Google.
Right.
And you let it have access to all of this. Weirdly enough, then that AI would know you better than anyone, almost. And it could really aid in consultation when considering decisions. You could say, based on every other time I've considered going out on a Saturday night with Jeffrey, do you think I should do this? And it might be able to, in a snap, say, your happiness level over the last 7 meetings has diminished by 50%. I would not recommend doing it. I've noticed that your happiness level on these alternative actions has been increasing. And based on what you said 6 weeks ago, I think your current values are shifting as such, and you should instead choose to do this. You don't have to obey it blindly, but damn, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
No, I love the thought experiment, and I love the not connected to any of the, uploading your life to somebody else, which is extremely frustrating with the current
Makes a huge
AI
difference.
It does.
It's honestly, it was when somebody said that we could run the current DeepSeek R1 on a home PC that costs $6,000, and they gave specifics. They said, here, this is what it costs. I've priced it out. This will run the current best full-powered DeepSeek R1 model on your home computer, not connected to the internet. $6,000 bucks. And I thought, whoa, that...
Did you do it?
No, but because, of course, it's going to, next year it would be $3,000, or next year it would be 5 times better if you can just get one more piece right.
And 5 times better.
Right.
Yeah.
But just the thought idea of it being fully private, where I would be willing to give it all of my private diaries that literally no other human besides me has ever seen, that changes a lot.
Well, and everything, if we can kind of try and wrap all of this quite, interesting in all different threads of a conversation, it seems to me that one of the assumptions underlying all of this, including this AI thought experiment that you've just offered us, is that you can upgrade the way you see things and think about things. And although this feels, perhaps to some it will be, just one more conceptual thing, it's been a very useful idea to me, which is a growth mindset squared. So I'm sure most people listening know about the growth mindset and fixed mindset from Carol Dweck, who was at Columbia for 20 odd years and then at Stanford and so on. And what she's saying is, if you have a fixed view of intelligence, then you will tend to avoid new challenges and experiences because it will subconsciously show you that that your intelligence, that you're not as intelligent as you thought you were. And so you want to protect yourself from that. And so that's limiting. But if you have a growth mindset, it's growth intelligence, which says, okay, I can get smarter. So if I take on a new challenge and I don't do well at it, it's just fine because I can get smarter. Okay, that's her thing. And it's very powerful. And I think it's powerful mostly because she's identified a perspective that happens to be fixed for almost everybody. Because we were taught it was fixed, because of the way that IQ was first framed and then the IQ test particularly around it, meant that it became a sort of hardwired concept in all of education and, especially particularly in the West. So that's the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. But the growth mindset squared is the same idea, but you say this, you say, I can upgrade my mindsets. So she's talking about one mindset versus another mindset, and that's extremely powerful. But we have hundreds of mindsets. the idea that you have those mindsets and that those mindsets can be upgraded, a whole mindset can be upgraded, is a completely different level of flexibility and intelligence possibility and just human potential. I mean, that's the limitless idea, I think. You don't have to be locked into whatever all of those mindsets you had before. They can all be upgraded, not all at once, but over time they can all be upgraded. And I just think it's the difference between being locked, limited, or limitless. And I think that's the thread that I hear in what you've shared, what we've discussed today, also what you've been writing about, is look, you can upgrade the very mindsets that are currently governing your thinking, your feeling, your actions, your sense of the world. Your final thoughts.
Love it. It helps so much to be an outsider. You know, you're not living where you grew up. I'm not living where I grew up. Moving out of your hometown helps you detach from the perspective that you heard too much growing up. It really helps to go to another part of the world, to feel at home, to really make friends with people that have a completely different way of seeing this, with a different moral framework and a different set of right and wrong, ideally that grew up in a different religion with a different culture around them. And every idea you talk about, they can present to you a very different way of seeing it. After a while, you internalize this yourself, and you can look at anything that comes up in your life or in the news, and you can hear your first reaction, and then hear your friend's reaction, even if only in your own head. Maybe hear the reaction of a fictional character that you know from your favorite book or movie. And then think of, what would Greg McKeown say about this? What would Derek Sivers say about this? What would... name any...
Well, name any author.
Like.
Yeah. Because they're all the mentors. They're all all mindset possibilities for you.
Yes. That's why I read books mostly, is to deeply understand another mindset. And now that's why I travel. I realized succinctly recently that the reason I travel is to inhabit philosophies. I can read about them. I can hear people from another place, but if I go to that place and try to inhabit that philosophy, to feel it in my gut and on my skin, I can understand that mindset better, and I can try it on, like wearing the local clothing, and know how that feels and see the world from that point of view. That's why I travel, is to keep increasing my options of perspectives.
Derek Sivers, not just an optimist, an optionist, someone who's...
Ooh, optionist! Dude, did you just coin my new one-word title? I like this. Optionist. Derek Sivers, optionist. Not author, not entrepreneur, optionist. Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Coined by Greg McKeown.
It's an idea that I really genuinely love myself, because when you said this earlier on about the brainstorming, like... We've all heard what brainstorming is, and you sort of pick it out. Okay, we're having a meeting, let's brainstorm something. Okay, that's not really at all what you were saying, and it's not what I mean when I think about it either. It's a perpetual process, literally all the time, because you're trying to break out of, well, once you realize how imprisoned you actually are, not by anybody, not by anything else, but just by all the frames you currently have, you want to constantly be upgrading them, challenging them, thinking, pushing the limits of them. How did Johnny Ive say about Steve Jobs? That he was the most curious person he ever met. But also he said that he got frustrated with the limits of his mind the same way that Johnny got frustrated with the limits of his body. You know, that is a very particular way of thinking about your thinking. And I feel so frustrated by the limits of my thinking. And the phrase that's meaningful for me is this poetic way of saying it. But thy mind, O man, must stretch, and to live perpetually in that sense of, optionist. What are the options? How could we think about this? How might we see it differently? There's not 2 ways to think about it. There really is 100 ways. Keep thinking, keep exploring, keep learning, keep being less wrong. And so yeah, that's a nice moment. If we see it in your bio, we know we've been successful here in our conversation. Derek.
We meaning you.
What a pleasure to have you on here to riff, to stretch our minds together, and to learn. I'm edified. I'm happy. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, anybody that listened all the way to the end of this, please send me an email. It's one of my favorite things. And the reason I come on podcasts like this is because it's like a magnet to find other kindreds around the world. And I answer every single email, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So anyone, please go to my website, sive.rs. I'm not on any social media. It's just my website. So go there, send me an email, say hello.
Oh, that's marvelous. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. I'm so happy for that call to action for everybody. For everybody listening to this, what's one thing that stood out to you? What is one thing that you can do differently, immediately, within the next 10 minutes or today? And who is somebody that you can share the conversation with now that this conversation has come to a close? Thank you, really. Thank you for listening.